Hey guys, it's Average and welcome back to the channel, and today we are taking a look at the big Radials Grumman Goose. This is what I've been very excited about since I heard about it, and I'm a big fan of the Goose, and in fact seaplanes in general, so I'm looking forward to this. Now, as you can see here, this comes in a number of liveries, including Coast Guard, Navy, Civilian, even Cutter's Goose, and we also have this version on skis, because that's a thing. Why not, right? This aeroplane is a particularly cool one. It's the older version of the Goose with the fixed wingtip floats. Later models had those able to fold up into the wingtip, made it more streamlined and made it a bit more efficient. Now, the Grumman Goose was first flown in 1937 on the 29th of May. It was designed to be a 8-seat commuter aircraft for businessmen in the Long Island area. Yeah, the northeast coast. Now, it was Grumman's first monoplane and its first twin and its first to enter commercial service. So, fun one there for that. Of course, it got used a lot during World War II as a transport. In fact, it ended up seeing combat duties and patrol duties as a sub-hunter. So there you go, the Grumman Goose has had quite an experienced life. Now, it had military and civil variants, of course. The military one was the JRF-5, I believe it was, the Navy version. But in terms of its actual performance, now, of course, 1 to 3 crew, 5 to 7 passengers, talking 8 total, really. And the aircraft had a top speed of about 175 knots, would cruise at about 166 knots, so it's pretty quick, range of about 560 nautical miles, with pretty good power provided by 2 Pratt & Whitney Wasp Junior engines, 9-cylinder air-cooled radial piston engines producing 450 horsepower each. That is enough stat bashing. Let's take a look at this thing. So, my head is on. Let's turn that off briefly for a second while we have a quick look around this. I don't want to fluff around too long because a lot to show. I don't want to take forever. The detailing is rather exquisite, actually, on this model. Now, I purchased this one myself, just for reference. Seems like things have been crunched in terms of texture resolution on this one. It's not super crisp, but it's not low res, if that makes sense. So, this is actually a very performance-friendly aeroplane from my quick testing. Looks a little bit worn. I like that worn look. I'm never going to be looking at it this close, so I'm never going to notice that line is slightly not crisp. From average viewing distances, it looks beautiful. And yeah, I don't mind that, to be honest, myself. If that's going to be a bugbear for you, then fair enough. But to me, actually looks like a Grumman Goose. It's got that good wear and life to it, and obviously we'll see a lot of repaints coming out. It's going to be a popular plane, especially amongst the bush community. I even like the fact the tyres are worn too. Adds to that old feeling. Now, I'll show you something to do with that in a bit, but first off, we're going to have a look inside with this camera because I want to do a couple of things. Now, of course, we have hatches here and here. It can be opened. We also have the rear cargo space / lavatory. Yes, that's a thing. Hello, there we go. We also have the steps there, which I can deploy by clicking on them. And if I go outside here, I have to go into that view, so I can do it that way, because you know what the cameras like to do. We can actually deploy our boarding stairs to get in and out of the Goose, which is a cool feature. Let's go back into here. And what is this? Ooh, cabin light switch, even in the back. Alright, let's put those away. Close the doors off from the inside, and yeah, we've got the usual accoutrements in the cabin here. It's a very basic cabin, very militaristic, which, to be fair, about the right time period for this aircraft. It's a simplistic interior for a simple plane. This is quite an early rendition. Now, you do actually have some instruments up there, which is kind of cool. So we have outside air temperature, we have time, we have altitude, and we have airspeed. Probably for a navigator in the back, or an observer. Probably a navigator, actually, in those contexts. What am I doing up here? Oh, yes, we're going into the forward cabin. Or forward compartment, I should say. Obviously, we can open this door with the hatch here. We have an anchor we can throw out when we're at sea, which we're not going to do now, obviously. But we do also have the bow hatch. So I can pop my head out here. I love the attention to detail in this thing. It is beautiful. Right. Enough fuss. Let's get back inside. Now, Obviously, we have locks here on the windows. These open and slide. I like a little bit of dirt at the forward edge rather than all the way along it. It gives that a bit of an impression of, whilst it's clean, you can tell where the edge of the glass is when you open it. Small thing, but to me, important. Might be a bit dirty for some. I'm sure repaints will fix that. I actually kind of like a little bit of the grime there. Now we have circuit breakers up here, as one might expect. We have our engine controls up here. We have panel lighting there. We have fuel crossfeed. We have our cut-offs, which we're going to be putting on now because we're going to get started and get out of here. We have our wobble pump right here, manual fuel pump. And we can actually deploy the exit ladder by clicking on this exact spot. We're going to open our hatch there. We have, of course, our batteries and alternator generators on the power here. Set our main fuel tank to the right engine there. We've got our fuel indicator here. Gear is there. Now, one thing I do want to show you, which I really appreciate from these guys, is the control for the shiny toys. Open that hatch, and we have a modern panel giving you a transponder for those who want to fly on VATSIM, and a GPS system, which is perfectly functional there. You can hide and show the yokes. Why is that hiding? Okay. And we can, of course, make the yoke leather, which I actually rather like. Not sure why that one's not showing on that side. I know there is one. Don't know why I didn't do that. Either way. Boarding ladder, of course. We have the anchor for when we're at sea. We have wheel hubs, and we have the water rudder, which is to ease your performance if you have only a single throttle quadrant or no way to have multiple engine control. You can actually activate a water rudder functionality in the aircraft to allow you to fly it. This is, well, taxi, I should say. This, of course, is just a scenic fishing store for when you're on the water. Now, we'll just put those wheel hubs on, and we'll pop outside real quick, and you'll see now the wheels have a flush, smooth hub on them, rather than the bare open wheel, which you probably didn't look at before, like that. We'll go with the bare open wheel for now. But we have all our instruments we would really need here. We have autopilot, we have instruments. This is an old school retro Goose. I love this look. To me, it's very functional. I would like a modern interior too, but for this one, I will take it. Now, of course, recognition lights are all here. We have rudder trim there. And let's get this thing started, shall we? So we're going to set our magnetos to both up here. We have props and condition are... Not condition, sorry, mixture full forward. We're going to crack our throttles to here. And we are going to go for an engine start. Do I not have enough throttle on this thing? That could also be a factor. Electrics are all good. Fuel is good as far as I can remember. Manual fuel pumps there. Those are good. Crossfeed doesn't need to be open. And fuel is set. Now this could be again to do with my Bravo quadrant, but if I start it with the actual starter on there, it starts up with no sound, which is a weird one. But when I actually hold the starter, we get the sound of starting. Oh, that's off. Never mind. I'm an idiot. I'm probably missing a step. We're coming on to 9 minutes in the review, so I am going to... I'm going to use the old magic press Control E because time is wasting and I'm stupid. So we'll solve that problem by clear prop. Oh, look at that sound. Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. That engine sound is very juicy. Parking brakes off. Start rolling, shall we? Now, ground handling's pretty easy. The nose is rather low, so we don't have to worry too hard about that. Let's pull this window closed for a second. Now I'll turn my head on here, so we're good to go there. I shall lock that window off before we go anywhere. There we go. This is very draggy. Unlike a lot of aircraft in the sim, which are very slippery, from what I found so far, and I had to go fly this before I reviewed it. I really had to fly it. I wanted to play with the Goose. Engine starts are always something that's a little bit weird on my setup because for some reason the alpha yoke interferes with its magneto system with a lot of aircraft, I've found. And I like having it for most of my single engine aircraft, so I tend to leave it equipped, which is my fault, but it does kind of mess with things in terms of single engine aircraft, or twin engine aircraft I should say. Alright, let's pull this thing out onto the runway. I'm going to take off without flaps for this because we just don't need it here. Tail wheel lock. Now we're going to advance our power smoothly to 35 inches on the manifold. Let's give one engine a bit more than the other so I can actually steer myself back into towards the centre line. A bit of rudder authority, please. There we go. Little bit of rudder dance. Nothing too severe. And she'll just lift right off the runway with no bother whatsoever. Bring gear up. Now the gear up, or gear animation is rather nice on this one of course because they're attracting to the sides of our hull. And this being a seaplane, they are in fact our hull. Nice. Let's get that back inside. So of course we have a spare autopilot system which isn't ideal for I think a lot of people, but it's period appropriate, so obviously you can utilise the normal autopilot functions of the sim, so if you use an external one or a macro or even know the shortcuts, they'll operate, which works just fine. So being a twin and having this high wind design, it's quite a stable aircraft, so when you're turning it does feel a little sluggish at first, but it does really have a good punch to it. It feels as good as the Aussie X Goose to fly, although a little bit less powerful than that one, which had 650 horsepower engines. This is about 200 less per side, but it still feels very much like a Goose. I mentioned earlier that it's a lot draggy than a lot of other sim aircraft. You will lose speed quite readily in this aircraft, and even their manual does state that you should really aim for a slightly steeper approach with this aircraft because it will lose speed very quickly, and whilst this has no stall horn, as would be appropriate for the aircraft type, it definitely, and we're going to land on the lake here just past Orcus, so our downwind is going to become an actual final for the lake, and then we'll take off and hit the runway itself. So you'll notice I'm coming in rather steep here, and we're just aiming for the water there, and we're losing speed already. Yeah. So I'm confirming gear is up. Okay, drifting to one side there. Let's straighten her up again. And we're about 100 miles an hour, 100 knots right now, so we're slowing that down, 120 I should say. Once we start to lift up our approach profile, that will drop off. Now, obviously not putting gear down, so we're going to stay a very clean fuselage. It's going to still land a little bit less than it would if we had the gear down for a landing. Look at that speed peeling off as we start to raise the nose. Move my down microphone so I can see my airspeed. I'm going to give it one notch of flaps for this, and I'm going to immediately have to apply power because we're starting to shallow out that approach path. And we should be wanting to aim it between 90 and 80 for our approach, 60 to 70 for landing. So I'm going to bring the aircraft down here. And as I'm dropping down towards the water, I'm peeling that power off. Bring the nose up. A little bit sharp there. I'm just going to hold the nose here whilst we descend down. Let the aircraft settle onto the water. Go. Now compared to a lot of the other sim float planes, this one definitely seems to have nailed the lack of boing 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 Roger Rabbit aeroplane. Maybe it's because it's a seaplane. I've noticed the widgeon does the same thing, and the icon are all very good because they have an actual hull in the water. I've noticed that float planes on actual floats seem to struggle comparatively. So this is us in the water now. If I wanted to turn around, I can power up the left engine here to turn right, power it back, and then power up the right engine to turn left. Obviously you pick up speed whilst doing this because you're pulling yourself across the water with the engine power. Let's knock that back. Now once you have a certain amount of airspeed, you can use the rudder itself for steering. Now obviously brakes aren't going to do anything. Let's pretend we do not have dual throttles. I've activated water rudder, meaning I can turn the aircraft using my rudder pedals or your twist grip on your joystick, whichever you have. So the reason I'm powering back here, of course, is so you can see we have the two pontoon floats. Now if I roll the ailerons, you'll notice that the aircraft does tend to dip one side or the other. A little bit less pronounced when you're at low speed, and we are just, even with the props turning, they'll pull us on the water. So when you are stopped in the water, shut the engines down, otherwise you'll drift. Now, those will drag, so we want to level those out as we get our speed up. And in case anyone's actually curious, we'll do a quick step taxi here, so you can see the water effects in the background. And we do have triple effects there from all three contact surfaces when they contact. And it step taxis rather nicely, even if the Sims water effects aren't phenomenal yet. Shut that back down. In fact, we'll turn this step taxi into a takeoff as we're doing this. Look at that power up there. Get my speed up, push the nose forward a little bit here. There we go. No porpoising boing boing boing. It's just smooth as we build speed here. 60 knots. And I'm going to pull back. And she pulls away from the water beautifully. This is probably the nicest flying float plane in the sim to date. That is lovely. Okay, so we're going to just turn my head off while I mess around with switches here. But we're going to go to nighttime whilst we're climbing out and see what this looks like. Oh god, that's nighttime. Would help if I knew what the switches were before I did this. Oh, those are our logo lights. We don't need that right now. Lighting. I remember the switch being up here or something. Ah, there we go. So those are the upper panel lights. What are these? What do these do? Should have looked ahead of time, shouldn't I? They don't. They're probably to do with the autopilot. Instruments. Okay, so there's our instrument panel lighting up. Okay. That is not bad at all. It's of course dusk right now rather than actual night, but beggars and choosers, and YouTube makes videos look terrible at night time, so we'll get a brief look at it. There you go. It's dark, like nighttime. It's not overbearing either. And no reflection from it. In fact, you do get a little bit of glow naturally, but not bad at all what you can actually make out in the YouTube video. So let's make this daytime again. Prepare your eyes for being blinded. Boop. There we go. Okay, we're going to let's turn around here and prepare for a landing at Orcas Island. Now, we still have our flaps deployed, which saves us a job there. Let's turn around here. In fact, I'll pull those up actually. We're not going to need them right now. We'll put those in a little bit closer to the runway. Put my head back on. And of course, if I wanted to, I could, in theory, open these in flight. Let's see what it sounds like actually. Louder. Much louder, yes. Can I open the forward hatch in flight? Yes, I can. That's realistic, but hey. I don't care. It's kind of fun. Not going to lie. Just imagine sticking your head out the front of it whilst it's flying along. Okay, so we're lined up with the runway over there ahead of us. It's going to be a long final for us, but it will show the profile on the approach of this aircraft. So we're already at approach speed. We'll put this forward. Pick up some speed here. Like I said, the aircraft loses power and loses speed very quickly. It's a draggy aeroplane, like it should be. It's got big, thick propeller blades. It's got a chunky fuselage. Yeah, it's going to slow down pretty quickly. Now, whilst I think the only graphical criticism I can make of this aircraft is perhaps the textures aren't as crisp as they possibly could be, I don't care, because they look great. The weathering looks natural and realistic. The textures look really nice. I do like the look of it. Everything looks appropriately thin in terms of the materials and the modelling. Window frames look to be the right thickness as you'd expect. Handling and performance is really good. I love it. And the little features like the anchor, like these steps. There's a little fishing stall that you can spawn in on top of the wing itself with a fishing rod when you're parked in the water, shut down. Yeah. They really brought every juicy feature to this airplane. If they do an update one day where they actually have modern steam instruments in this thing and modern radios on that central front panel, I think I'd never fly another plane again. Like, genuinely, I would be perfectly happy with that aeroplane for the rest of my time, because it does about 160, 170. It's got a good range. It's a great flyer. It's an amphibian. They've managed to get it right on water. Colour me happy. Right, gear going down. Yes, hand crank gear. Now look at the speed peeling off there already, and we're a little bit low on this approach, so let's put some power in here. Put one notch of flaps in there. We're going to get quite a bit of power because we are already quite low on this approach, so let's just straighten our profile out here and arrest that descent. Get ourselves centered here for a nice stabilized final and bring her down at Orcas Island. Okay, looking good. You could feel the power bleed off almost immediately with this aeroplane. You could feel it almost hit a brick wall when you pull back on the throttles. Man, it's been so long since I've flown a good Goose, and this one feels right. I tried the freeware one, I tried the Aussie X upgraded one from FSX, but that thing did not survive well. That was like taking a octogenarian former starlet from Hollywood and slapping her in 6 inches of makeup and hoping that she still looks like she did in her 20s. I hate to use appearance as a thing, but yeah, they did a great job and the makeup was phenomenal, but sometimes you can't just put glitter on a pig. And the model was old and chunky and FSX hadn't aged well. This, however, the model's great. I love it. Like, I'm sold on this. And for £20, this is really cheap. Oh, one wheel down. Put the other one down. Now, you gotta be careful putting the brakes on because you can nose this thing over with the central gravity where it is. Okay, we're good. Tail wheel unlocked. Flaps are up. It's not turned too sharply at too high a speed either. The idle sound of the engines as well, that throaty putt of the radials at low power is really nice. God, this thing feels like I'm in a 50-year-old Goose, a 60-year-old Goose. Actually, it'd be nearly 70 years old now. The originals would be 70, or just past that. Actually, no, they'd be 80 years old. This feels like I'm in an 80-year-old airplane that's still being kept lovingly going, you know? It feels like it's seen some real action in its life and it's been kept alive the right way. Lovingly cleaned and cared for, oiled, maintained. This thing feels like it has spirit to it. Listen to that burble at the low power. Oh gosh, that's nice. Yeah, I think my only real criticisms are the slight blurriness on the textures. Slight. It does make performance great, but there's a slight blurriness. Otherwise, But yes, the fact it only comes with retro instrumentation. You do have the GPS, of course, so if you really want to use that for navigation, you can. And the Sims shortcuts will help you basically use the autopilot in the aircraft without having to use the Sperry, per se. So you can cheat it, of course, but... Okay, so when I cut the fuel there was a definite step in the sound that went from engine to suddenly full throttle then cutting down. So there's maybe a bit of a step there when they actually pulled the fuel out and cut the engines off. That was a bit weird, I'll give it that. But for £20, $25, $30 or so, this is a very nice add-on. Comes with loads of liveries. It flies great, it looks good. This is one of those ones that will stay in my hangar, I think. There aren't many planes that keep themselves a spot in my hangar after I've finished reviewing them, which makes this an incredibly expensive job to do. But this is one that will be staying. I like this a lot. I can see myself flying this. That's the kind of endorsement I think I can give an aircraft. I can see myself still flying this in a year. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.